Welcome to Seasonal Pathways ECE Leadership Vodcast, where we provide for you, the emerging leader, the advancing leader, the executive leader, and even the transitional leader, ideas and things that you can use today in your leadership journey. So get ready. We're starting now. Welcome, and today I am so excited to welcome Brandi Crawford-Lavoie to our Vodcast. And Brandi has so graciously agreed to be our subject matter expert for the advancing director. She has a wealth of knowledge for people who have been in the seat for a while and who are trying to advance every year. And you're going to hear more about that in a minute. So I do want to welcome Brandi to the show.
Thank you so much.
So Brandi, tell us a little bit about your background and your passion for helping advancing leaders in early care and education.
Sure. So I have been doing this for almost 30 years, which sounds crazy to me, but I started when I was 20 teaching. So I have my associate's degree and then received my bachelor's about 8 years ago in early childhood leadership, and have been a director in the Central Florida area for about 18 years. So, and love every minute of it. It's definitely a gift, to have this kind of passion and be doing it this long. And there's nothing else that I could really see myself, any other field I would be in for sure. And I just love, supporting other directors. I know how hard it is. I moved here from Louisiana 17 years ago and didn't know much about Florida stuff, but so, sink or swim and figured it out. So I always, want to be able to support and help other directors kind of figure out, the best ways to do things and not necessarily have to recreate the wheel on their own or feel alone out there. It can be kind of lonely as a leader. And so Absolutely. Having that support, I think, is so important. And I love doing that. I want to see new leaders coming up in this super important field. And I think where we're going in our world is more and more showing how important early education is, and we need good leaders to be able to do that. So
that is so true. And you're going to be hearing more from Brandi. She's going to be providing some blogs for us and sharing some of her tricks of the trade, if you will. So make sure that you are watching out for that, and you will be posting that on our Facebook page and things like that. So Brandi, we have a new school year. And for me, when I was in the director's seat, I loved back to school. For me, that was my happy new year.
Yep.
January was fine, enjoyed having a new year, to write, etc., thinking about personal things. What are you going to do better? But for me, it was all about back to school, helping me professionally, what I could do better, where I was going to go, how I was going to grow, different things like that. So give us some tips or thoughts about what an advancing leader, specifically in early care and education, might be thinking or should be looking towards in this new year.
I agree with you. I think this is always my new year. I get caught up in saying those kinds of things, and other people look at me like, what do you mean? It's August. But I agree. It is kind of my new year as well. And, it's exciting and frustrating and overwhelming because so many things are going on, and trying to support your staff and your families and those last minute enrollees and getting all of the things done. So I think one is being organized and having some kind of a plan of, how you enroll and what you do for your staff. But for me too is setting the theme for the year and the tone for the year. So I always like to come up with whatever, maybe a certain thing that has been laid on my heart, or I saw maybe in the year previous that we were maybe struggling with. And so finding, this year we're pieces of a puzzle. And so together we all fit together at my school. And that's kind of what we're building on, and really setting the community for my staff to build together. We have new staff coming in, which I'm sure lots of people do, as we are having all of these hiring challenges that we seem to have now. And just building that community so that our teachers can support each other, and it doesn't always fall all on my shoulders. So I think that that's really a big goal of mine, and being able to support our families in the same way so that they feel that when they come into our school.
I agree. I think all of those things. So I wrote down organizing, having a theme. For me, themes always helped bring out more thoughts or bring it together in such a way that it made it more cohesive
So
as the
yep,
year
I was
went
just
on.
about to say that. I can kind of intertwine that throughout the year in my trainings and staff meetings and those kinds of things that I do for my staff. So it does kind of bleed over into the entire school year.
I like the word you used. It sets the tone. How do you see tone being a little different than maybe a theme?
I think the tone is more about um, the way we handle different things and how we address whether that's conflicts between staff or conflicts with families or children, and setting that tone of being, one of my big goals is always about grace and compassion for each other and for our families, and really looking at that. And so when we have a conflict or we're feeling any kind of way, to be able to kind of come back to grace and compassion. And I think that's the tone of the school, is to
I love
be
that.
graceful and compassionate to all of those people that are entering our building, no matter who they are. So I think that's different than a fun theme that
Mhm.
I think the theme should go along with the tone and support whatever that is, that community that you're trying to build. But it is different as well. So the theme is kind of a fun way to do that, I think.
Right. So, as an executive, do you have a process that you put yourself through that helps you kind of reflect on the past year and what you need to focus on for the new year?
I'm a big list maker, and so I have a notebook that I keep throughout the year, and it's a you know 5 subject notebook or something like that. And one of those subjects in the notebook is always goals and thoughts for the next year. So as for instance, this coming year, 23-24, I'll make notes in there of things that come up.
Yeah.
And so when I get to May and start thinking about the new school year, I can go back and reflect on those things from the whole school year, because we think we'll remember what happened in September in May, but we won't. And so
Yeah.
that way we can have that. And it can be even things like events that happen. Maybe we had an event, and after the event, I thought, ooh, this will work better for next year. But you don't remember that the following year if you don't write it down. So I think a big part of mine is keeping those notes throughout the year, so that come May and the beginning of June, I can reflect on them and then make the plan and be able to set that in motion for, kicking off in August. So
Okay, I love that idea, a 5 section notebook.
notebook. Yep.
So one of those is making lists and notes about what you did do or thoughts or ideas and how you might want to change that the next year. One of the things I like about that is you can come back throughout the year and add to that. So that's
Right.
great.
Yep. It's
Can I
ongoing.
ask can I ask what the other 4 sections are?
Sure, sure. So a couple of them are just my daily to-do list. I mean, every
Okay.
day I make a list of what I need to get done that day, and kind of the next day or maybe 2 days, whatever's been crossed off or whatever's still on there, I transfer to the next page. And
Okay.
so it just kind of is an ongoing to-do list and keeps me, you know, tracked of what I need to do of just my regular stuff every day. And then I usually have a section for events. And so I have little tabs in that section for different events that are coming up. So as I plan an event, I can keep that organized of, who the volunteers are, what other materials that I need, what do I need to schedule, what is my budget, any of those things that have to do with that event. And that way, all of those things stay with me. I take that back and forth to work. It stays in my work bag. And so no matter where I am, if something comes to me at home, I can write that down and then put it back in my bag and keep moving on and not worry about forgetting it. So, and I keep those notebooks for years. I keep a file of all of them so I can go back. It always has important phone numbers and emails for me to go back to. So I
I
keep
love
those.
that idea.
And even my feedback from my teachers, I usually ask them at the end of an event what they liked and didn't like. I'm all about trying to make life easier for my teachers. They have so much to do, and unfortunately, we can't pay them nearly enough for all that they do. And so it's really important for me, one, for them to be a part of of the school and really feel like their thoughts and ideas, to know that those are important to me. And so at the end of an event, I always want their feedback too. What could we do to make it easier, better? And so those can go in that note. I write those ideas down too, because there are things that they're doing or see that I don't see. And so I think it's important to get that feedback for the following year as well. So that goes in there as well.
Perfect. So what advice would you give? Let's go through our seasons that we use for seasonal pathways. So what would you recommend that a fairly new, so maybe they've only been a director for maybe 2 to 3 years, what would you recommend that they focus on in their own personal leadership development in that 2nd to 3rd year?
I think it's really honing in on your own goals. I think the first couple of years of being a director is really just figuring stuff out. What are the rules? You may come in and know the rules and regulations, but when is this due? And when is this due? And who are the people I can call? And there's so much of kind of just paddling, or just trying to keep your head above water.
Yes.
That I think once you get into like year 3 or so, then you can really start looking at what kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of school community and what kind of atmosphere do I want for my school? And really start to align yourself with colleagues, books, podcasts, things like that support where you want to go in the kind of school and atmosphere and climate that you want for your school, rather than just the everyday, day-to-day budget and scheduling and enrollment that we all have to do too. But I think finding that is so important to keep our passion alive and to keep us motivated to feel like we're doing more than just the daily grind of the things that have to get done, but it's actually the stuff that I feel like anyways is what makes us continue going. It's the legacy, moving forward. If I can get, what my goals are, and that way my families, when I do tours, or my staff feel that, they can, and then that regenerates through them, and then all the other things happen from that too. So I think that, and I also think taking care of yourself, making sure that you're doing, getting enough sleep, eating well, drinking enough water, the simple things sometimes that we don't do. And when we're overtired or we're not eating well, it weighs on us. And so all the other things become so much bigger. And so I think it's really important as a leader to continue, to take care of yourself and really align yourself with some other leaders that you can, sometimes call and vent or ask for advice, or, because we are, as a leader, usually you're kind of by yourself up there. You can't talk to your teachers about those kinds of things. So I think it's also really important for us to keep that in mind and to take care of ourselves and not lose ourselves trying to take care of everybody else.
So having a good support system for yourself.
Absolutely.
Those are all great points. What kind of things do you prepare for before your teachers either come back for the school year or transition from last year to this year? Because some of them go through the summer and some of them don't. But there are things that I think directors prepare prior to the staff coming on board, because as directors you have to be one step ahead of everything, pretty much. So do you have some thoughts about that?
I do. I think for me it's about really thinking about and focusing on whatever that theme and tone is that I want. And then I always like to start off the year with a staff orientation and team building day. So depending on how the school year goes, I get to do it during the week because we are not in for the summer. So, but those that are all year, maybe a Saturday or something that you do that, or closed for a day. Professional development is really, really important. And so I think if you can inform and educate your families about why you're having a day for that, they understand it. But for me, it's preparing that. So we do fun games. I do little goodie baskets for them. And I really focus on making them feel appreciated, loved, excited about the new year. And those things, I think, just it starts to set the tone for the year when they can come in and feel excited and know that I'm excited and and that I have the things that they need ready to go. I
Oh,
think
good
it's,
point.
you know, class lists are ready. They're, they've got the supplies they need, whether that, I mean, that's from tape and Sharpies and scissors to, new clipboards for their emergency files and those kinds of things. So I think that makes their life easier and helps them not be as stressed out about the new year and getting ready for that. So I think that's really important.
I agree. I think anytime that you do that little extra preparation and you have things ready for them, not just the supplies, but something that says, I'm so happy you're here this year, the little goodie bags and things like that.
Right.
I think that starts things off on a good foot, so
Yeah.
I think that's really nice. One of the other questions that I would have for you is, periodically, and hopefully it's every year, we start to see a little bit of a spark in some of our staff members, and we say, you know what, there's some leadership potential there. How do you look for that? How do you maybe prepare to have opportunities for an emerging leader in a new school year?
I do. I mean, I think as a leader, I always kind of, one of the gifts or to me is that I get to see those things. A lot of teachers sometimes they don't see it in each other because they're so focused on their own classroom and those things, which they need to be. But as a leader, I get to see those other sides. And so I think when I find someone that I think, oh, maybe it's giving them, starting off with small responsibilities, asking them or having them take care of an event or, start to plan something. And for example, this year, I got a great recommendation, or not even a recommendation, but some advice from a parent that wanted to know our themes or spirit days for the whole year. So we like to do spirit days during the year. And typically it's kind of last minute, like, in October, I'm like, oh, in November, we should do whatever. And 2 weeks before, I'm sending out an email saying, we're going to have this dress up day. And so this mom said it would be great if you had the whole year planned, because sometimes I'm out at Goodwill or wherever and I can pick that up if I know it's coming in a few months. So I thought, okay, that's great. When am I going to do that? How do I fit that in? And so I have a couple of teachers and I said, you know what, here's what I need you to do. You tell me what the spirit days are, what day it is, and what it entails, and then I can put that on the calendar, and make a list, and I'll get that out. So that's just one example of a small piece to see, and then you can kind of see where are they going to take a hold of that, or do they kind of pull back and they're not, quite ready? And then that, the next step is, sometimes just having a conversation with them about, this is what I see, and is this something you're interested in? And let's get you, some more training and get them tied into what things are available out there to either build their self-confidence, because I find a lot of them don't have the self-confidence. They didn't see this as necessarily a career. They saw it as, a job. And then when they realize it could really be a career and they, have more, somebody sees in them something they didn't see in themselves. And so being able to have those conversations and keep building on that is really important, and having the resources for that, because they don't know where to find resources usually. So
that's excellent. I think that there's so many times that there are people that have great gifts and they won't do anything with them unless somebody says, I think you could do this really well, that somebody else has confidence in them. When I was, I taught at a couple different, one junior college and a university. And when I would get students that would come in and they would say, I talked to my advisor and I was in the nursing program, but I couldn't do the math very well. So they told me, you might as well go into early childhood. And it was like, that's the consequences of not being able to do math, just go into childhood, rather than, you would be great at early childhood. You have these skills, you have these talents. So I agree. Sometimes you have to tap those leaders because they don't know. Somebody told them to go into this field. And sometimes it's a great match and sometimes it's not.
Well, that's how I kind of fell into this career. Honestly, when I was 19, I was in upstate New York, and not working. I mean, I was kind of babysitting here and there. And my dad said, Brandi, you should like, and I started looking at a community college, and he said, you should look into early childhood and childcare. He's like, you've always babysat, you love kids. And this is where the money's going to be. Everybody needs childcare. Well, it's not where the money is, but everybody does need childcare. So, and that was what kicked me into. So I went in and got my AA degree and fell in love with it, and had the best professor that she's just such a great mentor to me. And that's really how I fell into this career. I mean, it wasn't really anything. I knew I loved kids. I always thought I'd be a teacher, but I never thought of it in this atmosphere, in this environment. And so it was really my dad who kind of said, you should try that. And I was like, oh, okay, let me see what that's about. And then here I am almost 30 years later, still doing it. So
right. And now you're teaching teachers.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things that I love is I look, you know, through the different seasons in my career, how many times people fed me, you know, these wonderful mentors that I had, and trainers and teachers and just different things. And then eventually how I was able to give back and provide training and teaching and whatever. And now we have seasonal pathways to make sure all of us have an opportunity to leave our legacy, as you talked about before.
Absolutely.
Well, these are great thoughts and ideas. The other thing I wanted to just tack on to what you were talking about there is, for an advancing leader, when you see that spark and you do, you know, tap that shoulder and say, here, would you do this project? Or, you know, it really allows you to increase your leadership as well, because you have to be a good delegator.
Yes,
you need to know
absolutely.
how to make people successful. You need to know how to put boundaries and parameters around things. So it's a developing skill for the leader as much as for the emerging leader as well. But you're right. Once you find somebody that can follow through with a small project, then you give them a little bit more. And you know what? Growing leaders is one of those things that is such a benefit to you.
Future. Absolutely. And that's what I mean. That's kind of the way I look at it too. I mean, sometimes I'm bringing people up to leave me, and that's okay. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm giving all of my stuff to them so that they stay here and never leave me. If I've been able to inspire, help, educate, make them, you know, to be able to go out and do this in another school or in another area. I mean, I think that's building our community and childcare. I mean, that's what, you know, building leaders everywhere. I don't need to keep them tied to me. So, and you're right. Then the next one's coming up. So, you know, somebody else is going to step in. But I do think leaders, sometimes we have a hard time, the delegating part that you mentioned, we have a hard time sometimes, you know, delegating, because sometimes we feel like it takes more time to do that than I can just get it done on my own. And so we have to kind of learn how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the sad thing is maybe they could do it better than us. And wouldn't that be great? I think that's one of Seasonal Pathways' foundational values, if you will, is the whole idea of whatever we can share to allow people to grow and develop. That leaves them room and time to do things much better, greater experiences, and they can do things better than we did because we gave them the time and the space to do that.
Right.
So, you know, that's really what leadership
and
is.
We can learn from them. I think it's naive to think that as a leader, I've been doing this 30 years, that I can't learn from somebody coming up. You know, I mean, things change, and I'm on, you know, I try and stay on top of everything and the new things. But, you know, I feel like I always have something to learn, and they can teach me, you know, they can teach me an easier way to do it or a faster way to do it, or, you know, those kinds of things. I think it's important to also be open to what that upcoming person can also give to you, what we can learn from them. I think it's a two-way street.
We are going to have a little short free webinar on delegating. And so one of the things that I learned, many, many years ago was this phrase: anything that someone can do as well as or better than I needs to be delegated, because that frees me up to do the things that only I can do.
Thank you. Yep.
Isn't that a great quote? So
that's great.
Yeah, so we'll get that out and get that information out to people as well. This has been very impactful. I think you've given some really good tips and ideas for advancing leaders to be thinking about through this next school year. Any final words of wisdom that you want to share?
Oh gosh, just, try and enjoy. I'm so excited our kids come back next week, and I am so excited to see them, and just trying to not get so bogged down with the day-to-day minutia, and really enjoy and be excited about seeing my families and my kids and enjoying the new year. So I think just remembering that why we're here, what the real purpose is, which is those kids that are going to be coming into our schools, or already have started coming in. So
That's great wisdom. You need to keep the joy in it, because if
yeah,
you don't show the joy, it's not going to be caught by anybody else.
yeah. Get out of your office and go play a little bit.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
my final word.
Well, Brandi, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this time, and I know that our audiences are going to hear more from you. And just keep watching for the different avenues that Brandi's going to share for the advancing leaders. And that always connects to our emerging leaders and great wisdom for our executive and transitional leaders as well. So thank you for joining us today, Brandi.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Seasonal Pathways ECE Vodcast. We hope you liked today's information and that you really got a valuable nugget somewhere in our presentation. So if you liked today's presentation, would you do us the favor of liking and subscribing? We can't wait for you to hear the next episode. Thanks, and have a great week.